Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. We have a really big group. Everybody seems to be very interested in learning best practices for Zoom. We're glad to have you. Today, we have John Young, who is one of our Zoom experts. And we also have Pavel, who's going to be answering some questions in the chat that you might have. Also, another great Zoom expert. Before we begin, if you're new to Tech Tuesday, if you have questions at any time during the session, please feel free to post them in the chat. We do have a lot of people signed on, so we have everybody's microphones turned off just to limit any background noises that might be distracting. So please, again, just post anything that comes to mind in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. I'm also recording today's session, so later on you will get an email from me with the recording, as well as some helpful links to things we talked about that you can go back and reference when you're creating your own Zoom meetings. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for inviting us. Hi, everyone. I'm John. I'm part of the network and ESO group, so we manage AV and phones. We have a lot of content to go through, so I'm going to breeze through a lot of the topics. And like Vanessa says, if you want elaboration or have any questions about what I'm going through, just put it in the chat and we'll either cover it right then or get to it at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. All right. So looking through kind of a lot of the incidents and questions that come in, one of the main things is logging into Zoom, right? We'll start at the beginning. So from the Zoom client, you would click log in, but because we are, we set up single sign-on as an enterprise, we need to click SSO for single sign-on to log into the Weill Cornell instance. If you were just kind of a standard Zoom user and registered with your personal email, you would just put in your Gmail or Yahoo address here and put in your password. But again, to log in with your Weill Cornell email address, you need to click SSO for single sign-on. Once you do that, you're going to put in our Zoom domain. So it's going to be weillcornell.zoom.us. Once that happens, if you click continue, it opens up in your browser. This popped up on my second screen. I'm dragging it over. It pops up with your, you see this often, your SAML login, and you put in your seaweed and your password. Once you log in, it says you can close this window and your Zoom client is now logged in with your seaweed account. Next, as a host, we're going to go through host settings and scheduling emails as a host. So we'll run through the scheduled settings very quickly. Generally, we want to generate a new meeting for every new meeting you schedule. You can use your personal ID, which is kind of a 10-digit number dedicated to your account. But the reason we don't do that is, or I don't do that, is because if you're using the same ID meeting to meeting, if you have back-to-back meetings and one of them run along, the next group of people will pop into the same meeting. Then for security, you can choose to use a passcode. You can choose to have a waiting room so people are forced in there and you admit them one at a time. Or you can also say only authenticated users can join. So this means any user logged in to Zoom as opposed to guests.
John, I think your Zoom window is actually in another screen.
My Zoom window's in another screen.
Anything that you're showing for the setting.
Oh, it's not showing it? All right, one second.
There we go. Perfect. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. And that'll be one of the settings we'll be talking about. So you see did you see me log in?
Yeah, we did see you log in. It just for some reason it minimized your window.
No problem. All right. So again, so to get to this screen, it's just a schedule button on the Zoom client. Name of the meeting, time, date, duration, meeting ID choice, again, personal meeting ID or generate automatically, security options, passcode, waiting room, or authenticated users. Now, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a user in Weill Cornell. It's just any user in the Zoom instance that has a Zoom login. So again, it could be somebody from Gmail, as long as they're logged into the Zoom client. By default, I typically have host video off, participants video off, but you can adjust that as needed. For audio, we're allowing both people to dial in or use computer audio. This is just because I'm using Outlook, once I click save, it'll generate an Outlook meeting, and I'll show that in a second. Advanced meeting options. I typically choose to allow participants to join anytime in case I run late, they can start without me, or in case, a meeting I scheduled and I can't attend. The rest of it is really on a case-by-case basis. Mute meetings, participants upon entry. We did that for this meeting. Automatically record if you choose to. And this will only apply to hosts and co-hosts. Participants will not automatically record. Approve or block entries for users from specific countries or regions, and then alternative hosts, right? So for this particular meeting, I think Vanessa was the host, and she added myself and Pavel as co-hosts. So we would just put the email address or select the user. Now, this can only be users on our system. If there's a NYP colleague that's on the NYP Zoom, they won't show up as alternate host. They won't show up at the list of alternate hosts. And that's it. So once you click save, because I picked Outlook earlier, this will come up as an Outlook calendar, and now I can put invites to other people and so on and so forth. So that's one way of scheduling an email, scheduling a meeting. Then you can do it from Outlook itself. So I'm going to share my Outlook calendar, ignore all the meetings. So once you're in Outlook, you can say, I want to schedule a new meeting. Once you're here, we have the Zoom plugin over here. Now, there used to be some confusion. You used to have to install a plugin manually for Zoom. Now the plugin is built into Outlook. So if you still have the old one, you would have like 2 Zoom plugins. One would show up here where my OneNote is, and then this one is the native web one. This is the one we're using now. So if you click Add Zoom Meeting, I'm not logged in. So you're going to get the same login process, right? It's going to be single sign-on. If you're back here, you would scroll down to click single sign-on. You would do Weill Cornell, continue, bring into the same sample. There you go. So now this Outlook client is tied into my Zoom account. So I can create another meeting with Vanessa. I'm going to add Vanessa to the meeting. Now, one thing to keep note of is if you're going to change the date and time after adding the Zoom meeting, you have to update it. So for example, right now, because I clicked add Zoom meeting for a meeting at 5:24 at noon, if I said, oh, I didn't pick the date yet, so I'm going to make this Friday at 1 p.m. I need to go to settings and click update so that this pushes the meeting information back to Zoom. And then from here, you can also change the same settings that we went through on the regular client. All right, so random meeting ID, personal meeting ID, security settings, host video, audio, advanced options. So there's no all the same stuff here. But once we're ready, you click send, and it'll show up here, and Vanessa will get the invite. To show the same thing on the web Outlook client, I just went to o365.med.cornell.edu, which is how you get to O365 and log in. Went to Outlook, or go to Outlook, go to your calendar. And then click new event. There we go. Same thing, you pick the diamond date, and then the Zoom option is over here. If you click here for more options, Zoom, add a Zoom meeting, and it logged me in. But if I wasn't logged in, and I can show you that quickly, if I sign out, it's the same sign-in process, right? SSO, Weill Cornell, and put in your seaweed and password. So I'm not going to show that again. All right, so now once you set the meetings, let's talk about what your options are once you're in a meeting as a host. So I'm going to bring up the participants. right, so in a Zoom meeting, if you have the participants list open, you have some controls such as muting all the users, allow them to mute themselves or not allow them to mute, not allow them to unmute themselves. You can make hosts and co-hosts by doing this. If you go to one of the users, find somebody who should be a co-host, and why can I not make
It might be because you're co-hosted, I'm host. Do you want me to?
Oh, are you host? Okay, sorry. So you're
Do you
right.
want me to
So
switch? I
can
can
you,
switch you.
yeah, can you make me host?
Yes, I can. One
Thank you.
moment.
So you can only have one host in Zoom, but you can have multiple co-hosts. As a co-host, you can mute people, unmute people, kick people out, but you cannot promote other people to co-host. So now that I'm a host, I'm going to pick Doug because I know Doug, and I'm going to make him co-host. So now Doug will have certain abilities within. Oh, can you only have two? All right, let me add Vanessa back as co-host because she seems to have lost it. Let me co-host also. All right. So this is how you promote people to host and co-host. And this is useful, for example, if, now let's get to the security options. So do you guys see my, it seems to go away a lot. So this menu bar within Zoom has a bunch of options that that we're going to go through. So first are the security options. You can, over here, you can enable waiting room, lock the meeting so nobody can enter once all your participants have shown up. You can allow participants to screen share or not, chat or not, meaning themselves, all these settings here. Now, for example, right now, we don't allow participants, other participants to screen share. So, but what if I need somebody to show something? Well, at that point, I would promote the person to a co-host. So as a co-host, they'll be able to, they're no longer a participant and they'll be able to screen share. So that's one way of controlling who can screen share if you lock it down. Participants tab we talked about. Move this out of the way. Polls. So we're not going to go into the details, but within Zoom, there are a lot of built-in features such as polls and live transcription, breakout rooms, reactions, raise hands, and stuff like that. Let's see. I think those are generally the highlights of the settings that we were going to talk about. Breakout rooms, I'll touch on quickly, is used in a lot of class settings. Basically, we can split all the participants here up into smaller groups if we had group activities planned for like 20 minutes and then bring everybody back to the main meeting. I think that's it for the host settings. Now let's talk about some more general settings, whether you're a host or a participant or not. One thing is virtual backgrounds. So by default, we have a large number of virtual backgrounds that are external affairs, official wall panel backgrounds that we put in from external affairs. If you wanted to add your own backgrounds, you can do that here as well. Another couple of things to note. So if you have external mic or USB speakers, you would control them here, right? So if you click the little drop down next to the microphone or the video camera, you can choose. If I had a USB webcam, it would show up as a second option here. So this is how you would quickly choose mic and speakers. Another quick note, if you attend this meeting in a conference room where the AV in the room is joining the same meeting, you want to make sure you leave audio, so to prevent feedback. Right. So if I was in a conference room that had the video conference equipment joined to the same Zoom meeting, and I want to join this meeting to, for example, share my desktop, I would click this. So the use case there is that, you're not going to have feedback between the microphone system in the room and the microphone on your laptop. All right, so some advanced, less common screen sharing options. One, you can share a whiteboard. All right, so now instead of just a desktop, you can whiteboard and draw whatever it is that you need to. Another thing is, and I think everybody knows this, you can share applications instead of your whole desktop. I tend to just share my desktop, but if I have a PowerPoint slide here open, you can share just a slide. Let's see, what else? Share the screen first. There's also a new function that some people are interested in, and you can share your PowerPoint as a virtual background. Vanessa, do you guys see this window that I'm sharing?
Yes, the one that says PowerPoint is virtual background. Yep.
Great. So you would click this, and you're going to have to upload your PowerPoint slide. So in this case, I'm going to close this so to not cause confusion. So I'm going to upload my PowerPoint. And there we go. So basically, it's using my slide as the background, and a little picture of me in the corner. Now I can move my picture around, make it bigger and smaller depending on the content. And I would have to change the slides using the Zoom controls. So, as we go through, and I'll talk about these slides in a second at the end. But it's a neat little feature. Stop that now. Back to showing my regular desktop. All right, so let's talk about some of the Zoom client settings. So if you go into your Zoom client and you click the settings button, it brings up a pop-up window with general settings for your Zoom client. Some of the ones that we wanted to bring up are dual monitor. If you have two monitors, you may want to use a dual monitor function. And what this will do is it'll create two separate Zoom windows, one for content if somebody's sharing content, and one for the gallery, so that it's not all in one window with a row of pictures on top. Next, if you go to screen share, what I have turned on is typically, when you're sharing your screen, you don't want to show your Zoom window. But in situations like this, where you're doing a demo or some other use cases, you want to check this box so that you actually see the Zoom windows as you share it. And those are the two major settings that we changed. You can control your audio devices and settings here, video here, and so on. All right. Another place where you can get to your settings is from the website itself. So to get to the website, you want to go to weillcornell.zoom.us. You do not want to log in at the regular zoom.us site because your accounts are all based on Seaweed and Active Directory. If you go here and click login, it'll bring you to our standard SAML login page, and you just log in from there. I have the admin tab down here. You would see just a lot of the personal links here on this from the settings perspective. Let's go to profile first. One useful tip is if you scroll down, you can actually customize your personal meeting ID and create a personal link. So for example, your personal meeting IDs, a lot of people use their cell phone numbers, right? This way you can just say, hey, join, Zoom meeting, my cell phone number, and you don't have to create a meeting. This is always available. Another one is you can use a personal link. So instead of a 10-digit number, you can use your Seaweed. You can use, I put ITS Tech Tuesday. So if you were to, you can say just join ITS Tech Tuesday, the meeting, so that if you click the join button here, I can't because I'm already in a meeting. But if you click the join button, typically you would have a pop-up. You can put in your 10-digit number, or you can just type ITS Tech Tuesday. That would bring you to the personal meeting for this account, for my account. Then if you go into standard settings, there are a whole bunch of options, and we have documentation on this. but you can control whether you want to use a waiting room by default, when you want to use passcodes. If you wanted authenticated users only, you can control only Cornell. We have some subcategories where you can have meetings that only Weill Cornell or only Cornell or Weill Cornell people can join, only WCM and affiliates. This include NYP, HSS, MSK, or WCM only, and so on and so forth. But if you scroll through these, there's a whole bunch of settings that you may find useful. I think that's it for the general settings and run through. I know I went through these things really fast and I see a bunch of things in chat.
Yeah, I could read them off to you, so if it's a little easier than pulling up the chat window. So while you were doing the Outlook meeting setup, we had somebody who asked, if you drag and drop a meeting to change the time, will the Zoom be updated?
It will not. So, but there's a few caveats there. If you drag it, a Zoom meeting will not be updated, but it shouldn't affect the ability for people to join. And the reason I say that is, once you create a Zoom meeting, it's active for, I believe, a month. So as long as this isn't a month later, you're not dragging it, you're not changing the date to a month later, it'll still allow other people to join. Now, if you wanted to do that though, what you would do is, if, for example, if I wanted to drag this, I think this was our test meeting. So if I drag this, for example, to 3:30, I can just double click it, update settings, and then save and close. Now, the difference here is how it looks in Outlook versus how it looks in Zoom. Again, I know the question was, will it break anything? It won't. It'll still allow your participants to join, even if you didn't take that step. However, if I move this meeting to Thursday, let's say, right, in Outlook, it's in Thursday. But if you go into the website where you can also see your upcoming meetings, it's still going to show Tuesday. And that's the only issue that I can see.
Does it matter if it's a personal meeting or not? Like, does it matter the meeting type it is when you drag and drop the changes that would happen?
As opposed to what? Sorry.
Julia, if you want to clarify the question, I can give it to John. We'll move on to the next one. Oh, so these are some that Pavel's been answering, but it might be good if some people aren't following the chat, if we just share it for the benefit of everybody. If you enable a waiting room, does that keep people from joining automatically?
Yes. Now, unless they, you can set up the meeting so that anybody stays in the waiting room or only certain people stay in the waiting room. So let me run through that quickly. So if you turn on the waiting room, you have some custom options here. You can say everybody has to be in the waiting room, or you can say only users that are not Weill Cornell users, not in our account, gets forced in the waiting room. Everybody else can jump in automatically. And so if you go to your settings in weillcornell.zoom.us and you go to waiting room options, you can go to here and edit the waiting room options. Who should go in the waiting room? Everyone. Users not in your account, or only people in specific domains. Who can admit participants from the waiting room? Host and co-host only. Or if you're saying anybody in Weill Cornell can bypass the waiting room, maybe anybody who's already in the meeting can admit other people. Right. So these are some settings here, and you can customize, put in different logos and put in a little text and so on and so forth.
Awesome. We just got a question. How do I schedule 2 different meetings at the same time, at the same date and time without any conflict? So I'm assuming, Nina, if you want to clarify this, you're maybe doing this on behalf of other people, setting up meetings for them, and you need 2 different meetings at the same time and date without conflicts. Is there a way to do that, John?
Yeah, so there's actually been a change in the Zoom policy. You actually can host 2 different meetings at the same time now. And this, that's part of why, when I schedule meetings, I say anybody can join the meeting even before I join as a standard setting, right? This way, technically you can host 2 meetings. However, if you are scheduling meetings on behalf of other people, it's probably preferable that you are set up as a delegate. So that would be, if you scroll down to your settings, you can do scheduling privileges, right? So, if you think you may have to schedule 2 concurrent meetings, there could be a possibility you're going to need 3 or 4, and you may be doing this for other people. So at that point, you want to assign scheduling privileges, or you would want the other person to assign scheduling privileges to you so that you can schedule on behalf of them. So you're no longer the host. It's not tying up one of your host licenses or host sessions, and you can end up scheduling multiple meetings at the same time.
Hey, John, can you please show one more time how to do the Outlook, how to schedule a meeting using the Outlook plugin? And I just wanted to clarify, you're on a PC, correct?
I'm on a PC, but the interface shouldn't be that much different. So this is my Outlook window. You're not going to see schedule a Zoom meeting now, right? So what you need to do is you need to click new meeting first. So you have to open the event and this is on the web also. So from within the event itself, that's where the Zoom plugin shows up. Now, if you have the manually installed plugin, I think that Zoom button will show up here. But again, we're moving away from that. We've been telling people not to use it. So to use the integrated plugin, go into the meeting event, and then it'll show up here. And again, on the web, once you go into the event, you click the 3 dots for more options, and that'll show, the Zoom will show up there. And I can show that again also if needed.
We've had a few questions about meetings versus webinars. Can you briefly explain what the difference between those is and when one might be appropriate, the situations where one might be appropriate versus the other?
Sure. Really, it comes down to interactivity. Webinars are more for broadcast. Basically, you have yourself and maybe a couple panelists, and you guys are doing the talking, the presenting, and the discussions. So, and the expectation is that the participants of the webinar will not be able to speak, and they'll be able to ask questions via chat or the Q&A only. You use meetings when you want to be a little more interactive, when all the other participants may need to speak, be on video, stuff like that.
Great. Can you show actually one more time? We had a question where the dual monitor setting is, just for anybody who's interested in using it.
So if you go from your Zoom client, desktop client, there's a little cog here. You click settings. It's going to pop up window and just slide it back down. And what's my other monitor? Under general settings, it's going to say use dual monitors. And I can probably, no, I probably can't click it right now. Yeah, so use dual monitors.
All right, perfect. We got another question. When sharing my screen and when I change my main screen to another website or application, how can I make sure that the audience sees the new page I'm trying to share? I noticed that when I transition sites, they do not see what I am trying to share.
That doesn't sound normal to me, right? So for example, if I have this browser open, I guess it would depend if you're sharing the application or the desktop as a whole. If you're sharing just the application, that may cause that problem, right? So, but if as I'm sharing my entire desktop, anything I drag to I have 2 monitors, but I'm not using dual mode. But anything I drag onto the desktop that I'm sharing will show up. But I think if you're sharing a particular application, for example, if I'm sharing Microsoft Edge here, and I open another Edge window, that may be considered a different application, and you may need to stop sharing and share again.
We have the Q&A chat window feature in a webinar is very useful. Can you somehow add a Q&A option into a regular Zoom meeting?
I don't believe that's possible. Pavel, you may have to confirm, but offhand, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, right now that is not possible. I mean, we can make that suggestion to Zoom and see if they ever add it in the future.
Great. Another question. I've recently had a couple Zoom links expire or stop working, even though the recurring meeting is still on the calendar. Is there a specific setting that needs to be changed to ensure this doesn't happen?
Yes, so that's a good question. So that has to do with the update. So the order of how you create a meeting matters in when you interact from Outlook to Zoom. So if I'm creating a meeting now, for example, and so new meeting, and I add the Zoom session first, right? So this basically what this does is Outlook is now telling Zoom, hey, I need to schedule a meeting, for Tuesday, 24th at 4 o'clock. Now I make it recurring. So if I make it recurring weekly now for every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, Zoom's not going to get that information because I made the edit to my Outlook calendar after I added the Zoom information. So, but that's okay. To pass the recurrence request back to Zoom, you got to go to settings and click update. So now, because I added the recurrence information after I added the Zoom meeting, now that I clicked update, it's sent to Zoom saying, oh, what I'm creating now is for recurring meeting. Right. So this goes back to that 1 month limit, that 1 month threshold. If you create a monthly event, let's say, and add the event before you make it recurring, Zoom doesn't think it's a recurring event. And the issue is going to be if you skip a month, for example, now 2 months has passed and nobody joined last month, that meeting is expired. And so Zoom's not going to know. So again, the best way to do this is probably set up the Outlook time and recurrence first, then add the Zoom meeting. Or if you add the Zoom meeting first, you need to make changes to the date and time and recurrence. Make sure you go to settings, click update, so that Outlook pushes the new time, date, recurrence information back to Zoom.
All right, lots of questions. When you have scheduling privileges for another person, whose settings are in effect?
That's a really good question. It's going to be the host settings. It's going to be the host settings. So I hesitate there because it depends on which settings you talk about, right? So if I add a Zoom meeting here and I go to settings, these settings I can control regardless of who I'm scheduling for. However, the settings that are not listed here, which are part of the website, if you to bring it back, these settings, it would take the host settings. So if I scheduled on behalf of Vanessa and I have waiting rooms turned off and she has waiting rooms turned on, waiting rooms would apply because I'm scheduling it as on her behalf.
Awesome. You've been showing us how to basically create meetings like in Outlook or the web version and all of the formats. And you've been showing us also, like, if you're creating an Outlook meeting invite, you're just kind of typing people's names in to add them as participants. What if you're in the middle of the meeting and you need to add participants in meeting?
Great question. All right. So if you open the participants window, do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna move my face out of the way because I don't want to see myself. But if you click, so with the participants window open, you can click invite. Oh, that reminds me, I want to talk about host keys quickly. But if you click invite, this window comes up. And if you go to contacts, you can actually add people, send an invite to people manually. I don't know if Marcos is in this meeting, but let's say, I want to, sorry, lost it. I click Marcos and I click invite. If he's logged into a Zoom client, he'll actually get a pop-up from Zoom saying, hey, John's trying to invite you to this meeting. The alternative is, you can come here and it's going to leverage your existing email client. So this goes back to Outlook. The other thing I do is I would come here and click copy meeting invite, go to Microsoft Teams and just paste that link into, an IM and say, hey, can you just join me here on Zoom very quickly?
Awesome. I know you, I briefly confirmed with you that you are on a PC, and you said that the settings for Mac and PC didn't vary much, but are they the exact same settings? Like even if they look different, you should be able to do the same things on a Mac that you would on a Windows device?
Yes. There may be a one-off that has to do specifically with the OS, but I'm going to say 99% of the settings within Zoom, be it on the desktop setting, the client settings, or especially on the website settings, are going to be the same.
Perfect.
Before I forget,
Oh, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
let's talk about host keys for a second. You know, especially if you have people scheduling meetings for you, or you schedule meetings on other people's behalf. Not having those people join, you kind of lose some functionality to control the meeting. Now, if you want to, I can't see that now. I'm going to make somebody else host for a second. Let me just go there. So in this, in the website, there's the concept of host key, and I'm not going to show mine, but it's a 6-digit number that you can edit, and they assign you a random one, but you can change it yourself to something easy to remember. But if you create a host key, or remember your host key, and you give it out to certain people, if they join a meeting where you're host, you can claim it. So I'm going to make Pavel host. Hopefully you guys still see my screen.
Yes.
The question is, why do I not see claim host anymore? Hold on. Take away the participants, bring it back. Oh, I can't claim host because the host is here. All right, can you add me back? Sorry. All right, if there is no host, and that's why it doesn't show it, as a participant, if there is no host, there's a button here that says claim host. If you click claim host, it'll ask you for the host key. So if you know the 6-digit host key of the person who created this meeting, you can claim host privileges. So it's useful in a pinch. Sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
No, it's okay. When you were showing how to add participants in meeting, somebody asked, what is the difference between copy invite and copy invitation?
The invite is just, that's a good question. The invite is just the URL to join the meeting.
Oh, you have to share your screen, I think here.
Oh, sorry. Let me share. How's that?
Perfect.
All right, great. So the invite link is literally just the URL to join the meeting directly. The invitation has all the other information, dial-in number. Oh no, it's because this is a registered meeting. If you typically copy invitation, it'll show the rest of this, right? This is the invitation as opposed to the invite. This is the invite link. The rest of this is the invitation. So if you click copy invitation, it would show all this other information.
I think we've gotten through all the questions. We have a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions, any burning questions out there that John or Pavel can help answer? Going once, going twice. Oh, okay, one just popped up. Oh, how can I make a webinar?
Good question. So webinar licenses cost extra from Zoom. As the institution, we have a set number of webinar licenses that we can assign to people as needed. To request a webinar license for a particular event, go to my help desk and request a webinar. Somebody from the ESO will reach out to you, ask you how many participants you need, when the event's going to be, and we'll work with you and do some training. We'll assign you a webinar license so that you can create the webinar event. And we'll set a date when we'll take the license back.
Perfect. One more. How do you get the updated version in Outlook where you can schedule from your calendar? I think you said it was already part of Outlook.
Yeah, everybody should have it. There should be no, there should be nothing you need to do. And if you don't have it, definitely open a ticket. We'll take a look. but there should be nothing you need to do to get this Outlook plugin. So again, it's not going to show up in calendar view. It'll only show up when you're in the process of putting in the details of a new meeting, right? So from the Outlook client, you have to click new meeting to see the Zoom, to see the Zoom plugin. From the website, the same thing. In the calendar view, in the overview, there's nowhere to say, hey, I want to add a Zoom meeting. But if you click new event, that's where you're able to add the Zoom meeting to the event itself.
Oh, this is a good question. Is it possible to generate an attendance report for Zoom meetings, or is this a webinar function only?
You can generate reports in the meetings. So if you go to, again, the wildcornells.zoom.us. Oh, I'm an admin. I'm not going to have it, but you're going to have a reports, Pavel, if you can remind me, you will see a reports button here where you can run reports for the meetings you've held.
I can send as well in the follow-up email the instructions about where to find that for a regular account and how you would download. You can download registration reports of who registered, as well as who attended and how long they happened to sit in the meeting, as well as if you had any polls, you could download the poll results. It's super useful. I use it every week. So yes, you can definitely do it for a meeting. I think this might be the last question since we're running low on time. Do you have to have a certain type of iPhone to be able to adjust the Zoom background settings when using Zoom on the phone? I do not see any option in settings for background when I use Zoom on my phone.
I've never used it. I never use virtual backgrounds on my smartphone, but I know from a desktop laptop perspective, there are minimum hardware requirements for virtual backgrounds. So I'm going to assume there's similar requirements for mobile phones. So I don't know offhand what they are, but I'm sure they're, I guess if it's a older model phone, you may not be able to.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap it up? And Paul just put in the virtual Zoom background requirements that you need on your computer in order to have virtual backgrounds. I will make sure that that link is in the follow-up email. Patricia just mentioned, please list the wild domain again, please.
Sure. It's wildcornell.zoom.us. So let me bring it up.
All right. I think that's it for the questions. Thank you, John, so much for taking us through all of these Zoom settings. I know it was a lot of content to get through. Also, thank you to Pavel, who's been answering everybody's questions in the chat very quickly. And again, if you weren't following the chat, don't worry. I'm going to have a copy of it. I'll pick through it, go through all of the questions you guys had, and make sure that I have links to those answers in the follow-up email. And again, for any of you who came in late, don't worry, this session is recorded, so I'll host it online and make sure that you get a link to the recording so that you can always go back and watch it to look over anything you may have missed. But thank you again for joining us today, and I hope this makes your Zoom sessions easier to manage and host. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.